So good morning, Bill, and it's a lovely, well, I was going to say almost spring day, but it's pouring with rain here in Ocean Grove, though it has stopped.
Well, that's right, Mark. I just drove down from Geelong because today we're doing our podcast. What's that mean? We're doing our podcast from your house down in Ocean Grove, and as I look out the window, the ocean is flat calm, which is good, isn't it? But Mark, we've had a pretty exciting last couple of weeks with the Geelong Small Business Festival.
We have, and we had a very entertaining and I thought informative session for us as well as for the people that participate. 30 people at the Eastern Gardens at the Hub. Yeah. Talking about business planning and how to improve their business, and they were really engaged. And in fact, it was great. It was great fun.
Well, that's right. We ran a session called "Build a Better Business," is where you and I specialise, and we've had a fantastic response from those who attended. So I'm really pleased about that. Anyway, it's not about us, it's about our guest. So who have we got today?
So today we have Gail Rodgers, who's the CEO of the Geelong Community Foundation. And then Gail and I go back a fair way because Gail and I actually sat on the Ocean Grove Primary School Parents and Citizens, I think it was called.
Something like that. It's a thing that you do when you're a parent and your kids are at school. And the Apple Fair, did you ever have to dress up as the apple?
No, I never dressed as the apple, but yes, the Apple Fair the hours of work that were put in for the Apple Fair. So we've got a little bit of a history, and Gail is a resident of Ocean Grove as well. And welcome, Gail.
Thanks so much for the invitation.
No, our pleasure.
Yes, welcome, Gail. And you talk about school committees and that. Did you know that it was book week this week? Because I've got photos galore of grandchildren dressed up for book week.
Yes.
I'm glad all that's behind us.
Well, my daughter, who went to school with your son, is a teacher, so I still get to immerse myself in those experiences.
It's very cool. Yeah. So, Gail, let's start on your journey. Where did you go to primary school?
Oh my gosh. Well, you won't know it. That it was a tiny little farming community called Prealena.
Wow. Where's that?
So Prealena is on the northwest coast of Tasmania, very close to another little farming community called Mayuna, which was a soldier settlement. So my grandfather returned to Tasmania after the war. Well, he was obviously living in Tasmania and ended up on this soldier settlement in Mayuna. And then my father and my mother bought a dairy farm not far from there. So I went to Prealena Primary School up until grade 3 before I then went into the town of Wynyard, which is on the northwest coast of Tasmania.
And is the town still there?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Isn't it? And it's interesting because the number of people we've interviewed that started life on a farm.
Yeah.
Dairy farm.
Dairy farm.
Wow, absolutely.
And if we were doing this in another 40 years' time, they would all be saying, well, I grew up in the concrete jungle in the middle of Melbourne or it's a big city. Yeah. They won't be saying they came off farming communities.
No, I have very fond memories of my time on the farm.
So early morning starts up for the milking?
Well, I guess, my mum actually milked the cows and my dad drove log trucks. So, my mum worked very hard on the farm. So, I have very strong memories of my brother and I being told to stay in the house when we were tiny, which you would never do in this day and age, would you? Your parents would never leave you when you were tiny, while they went off and milked the cows. So
it had to be done.
Yeah, it had to be done. So my mum worked very hard.
Where was high school?
High school was in Wynyard, so Wynyard High School, and then I went off to Helier College, which is in Burnie, which is the next town where we had to go to. So, but I didn't finish my, what you would call VCE, because I was passionate about the travel industry.
Oh, well, okay.
And I desperately wanted to work in the travel industry. And my basketball coach owned a travel agency in the little town of Wynyard, where I used to spend my school holidays doing work experience, and I absolutely loved it. And TAA back in the days, I don't know whether you remember TAA.
Trans-Australian Airlines.
Trans-Australia Airlines, remember the up and away. Yep. So I was lucky enough to pick up a job as a traffic clerk at TAA in Burnie in 1978.
Wow.
And that's when my career in the travel industry started, and it was just the best.
So where did it take you?
Well, it was interesting because TAA used to fly into the coast of Tasmania into Wynyard and Devonport, and eventually those routes became unprofitable. So East West, I don't know whether you remember East West Airlines, they took over the routes. So all of the staff at TAA were offered the opportunity to transfer to anywhere on the network, within TAA. So I had a great opportunity as a 21-year-old to transfer to Melbourne, and I just thought that I would work at, transfer to Melbourne Airport and work at the airport. But in the meantime, I applied for a job in marketing in head office at 50 Franklin Street in Melbourne, near the Vic Market, and I was lucky enough to pick up that position in marketing. So that was a different direction again that took me away from that customer service focus into a marketing environment.
That's really cool. That's a really good story.
Yeah. Right, and here we are today in 2023, and as the CEO of the Geelong Community Foundation, can you tell us a bit about what is the Geelong Community Foundation?
What is the Geelong? Wow.
Yes.
Well, very basically, Bill, we are a fundraising and a grant-making organisation. I mean, that's very crudely, but we stick to our core business. That's what we do. But I guess we're a little bit different to most other fundraising organisations, is that we never spend our donors' money. We actually invest all of the gifts that are provided to us by very generous people, and we invest those funds. So today, our corpus is sitting around $33 million. So then it's the interest that we earn on that investment that we provide as grants to the community annually.
And it's a very clever model.
Very clever.
Because therefore it's sustainable, as opposed to sitting there hoping you're going to get donations and you can ride the wave, can't you, I suppose?
Exactly right. And if you look at our history over the last 22 years, you can see, obviously the market hasn't performed as well in some years as others. So, during the global financial crisis, although I wasn't there then, there was a bit of a dip. But we've had other years where we've had a 13-14% return on our investments. So, we're there for the long term. I don't look at the market every day. That would I'd have to that would be very concerning if I did that. But it's a long term strategy.
But there wouldn't be many organisations such as yours in large regional towns similar to Geelong that have got that amount of money sitting in their capital fund that is earning enough interest to provide grants to how many people in the last 12 months?
Well, it was a $1.34 million grant allocation in the last, or for 23-24. So we're probably the third largest community foundation in Australia. So we're pretty proud of that. Andrew Lawson was the founding CEO, and I was tracking him in terms of when he was going to retire, as to when I was going to apply, because I actually helped start the Geelong Community Foundation when I was at United Way many years ago, which is now called Give Where You Live. So I was there when we got it off the ground, when we had those very first conversations about, can we start a community foundation here in Geelong? So I've come full circle, which is absolutely fantastic.
Well, Mark, we should backtrack now that we've got to where we are today. Let's go back to the airline industry. What was the next step?
And what got you out of travel into where you are now? Where's that lead?
Okay, so look, I mean, just talking about my time, TAA, Australian Airlines and Qantas, so transitioned through all three. So when Qantas took over Australian Airlines, I was the reservations manager for the southern part of Australia. So I was given some fabulous opportunities within the airline, to complete leadership programs. They supported my MBA. Fabulous skills that I learnt, and fabulous mentors that I had at that time to learn those skills. When Qantas took over, I was commuting from Ocean Grove to Burwood. I had this fabulous idea. We relocated the reservation centre from 50 Franklin Street in Melbourne to this fabulous building in Burwood. You'd think that I'd do it, transfer it to Altona or somewhere. So, I was commuting, driving, 2 hours a day. And
been there.
Yeah, look, you wouldn't do it today, would you, Mark? But I also was pregnant with our daughter, and Qantas were offering voluntary redundancy. So the time was right. So I was lucky in that I could take a package, stop commuting, and enjoy being a mum for a while. So that was absolutely fantastic.
And then you obviously got bored being a mum.
Well, I didn't really. You could never be more bored being a mum, but it's just about things that happen. Hazelton Airlines decided to start an operation out at Avalon.
Yep.
And as soon as, I heard about that in the paper, what do you think I was thinking? How fabulous would it be to live in your own community and work in your own community? Because I'd never done that before. When Hazelton Airlines were looking for a regional manager, I was lucky enough to pick up that gig.
Very good.
And that was my first introduction to the Geelong business community. A very challenging 6 months, I've got to say, but introduced me to a lot of fabulous people, a lot of very supportive people in this community.
And a good airline. I was sorry to see them fold. I don't think they got the support that they needed.
No.
And I flew them a few times because I was in Target in those days, flying up to Sydney.
I remember that.
And I used to quite regularly fly with Hazelton. And I was trying to think of the owner's name.
Max Hazelton. Yeah, he passed away not so long ago, a few months ago.
On one of the last flights they had, he shouted everybody on the flight drinks out of Avalon. And I sat next to him. And it was sad.
He's a very, very passionate man. And he's the only boss I've ever had that flew his own plane to come to a meeting, to meet with me, And
yeah, it's a pity, isn't it? You get such good airlines come and go. So Hazelton, then to what then?
So while I was trying to build that product out of Avalon, connecting with lots of people, I came across United Way and the Loaned Executive Program. And I thought, well, here's a fabulous opportunity for me to build my network in Geelong. So I volunteered for the Loaned Executive Program while I was trying to build Hazelton Airlines. But it introduced me to a lot of people in the Geelong community as well. And I got to know lots of different organisations. And then, after the 6 months of, I guess, recognising that the Hazelton Airlines just wasn't going to work, they closed and the executive officer role of United Way came up. And, timing is everything, isn't it? I mean, it's crazy.
Can we just go back to the Loan Executive? Because the Loan Executive program is running still.
Still running, absolutely.
And can you explain, I understand what it's all about, can you explain how businesses can get involved in that Loan Executive for their people within their organisation?
Sure. I mean, and it's a fabulous way to immerse employees within any organisation into the community sector. So any business can volunteer a staff member to get involved in that program. So they learn about United Way and they are then charged with the task of going into businesses and spruiking why payroll giving or corporate donations would be a good idea. Now, I think that's what happens. Obviously, I don't work there anymore, but I'm pretty sure that that's the model that they still follow.
I think it is, because my most recent exposure was when I was consulting to a building company and they had one of their young guys join up.
And there's some professional development that goes along with it as well. But it's a fabulous way to immerse young professionals, predominantly, in the community sector.
That's right.
And it helps with public speaking because they have to stand up in front. So when I was at FAGS, we had a couple of people go through and do that each year. And that was good. It was a great program and it did allow people that wouldn't normally get up in front of people or go and visit, do it. It was good.
And it's important for business owners to understand that it's not always about work. And you've got to get involved in the community, but also get your staff involved in the community. And I think that's the important part. So I'll bring it back to your current role, if we may. Am I right in saying that families or businesses can actually invest, or invest is probably not the right word, but just explain the structure in which if Mark and I came along and we wanted to put $10,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is, or one, into your organisation, how does that structure work?
Okay, so it is a donation. It is a tax-deductible gift for the Geelong Community Foundation. But we start, anybody that wants to start or provide a gift to the foundation starts a sub-fund within the foundation. So we look for a $10,000 minimum to start that sub-fund, which can be paid over, a 3-year period. So every donor has their own sub-fund, their own account, their own member statement, if you like, within the foundation. So so it is all separated out. So every year we provide all of our donors with a member statement that shows their contribution. It shows their contribution to the grant program each year. It shows their contribution to our administration fund. We charge, or the administration was 1.6%. Last year, which we're pretty proud of, and I'll talk about why that's so low shortly. And then it's any appreciation on the investment of their funds as well. So it really is demonstrating to donors the power of endowment, the power of making a gift to an organisation where it's not spent, it's invested and then continues to return annually to make a contribution to the community. Now, many of our donors will make a contribution to that sub-fund annually. So it can grow as well, or it could be just a one-off gift. But the tax office requires us to distribute a minimum of 4% of our corpus to the community annually, and that's about what we do distribute. A lot of people say to us, well, you've got so much money, why don't you give away more? It's about having a corpus that is going to be giving forever.
The sustainability is the key.
Absolutely.
Well, and it gives you the old word, my favourite word, recurrent funding, right?
Yeah.
Because having been on a large regional hospital board and being involved in cemetery trusts, for instance, Mark,
right,
is that the recurrent funding is the most important thing for longevity of whatever is happening.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to your main fund, you've got something called P500. Could you just explain that for us?
So I guess when I started at the foundation, 7.5 years ago now, I was looking at our donor base and lots of very mature donors, I would perhaps call them, but there was nothing coming in the other end. So a lot of young professionals in the community had no awareness of the Geelong Community Foundation. So we needed to think about another product that wasn't potentially $10,000, because $10,000 it's a significant amount of money, and not everybody can afford that, especially young professionals, young families. So we started this whole concept of a giving circle, and giving circles are huge in the US, huge overseas, and they're starting to grow here in Australia now. So there are a range of different concepts that you can use to start a giving circle. There is a concept in Melbourne, and in other places, called Impact 100, $1,000 in. Everybody pulls that gift, and then it becomes a grant, and then it's the $1,000 out. What we did at the foundation with P500 is it's $500 gift in. So we look for a number of people who can contribute the $500, but we actually invest half of it into the P500 sub-fund. So that's about demonstrating to donors the power of endowment. So the P500 sub-fund is the fastest growing sub-fund at the foundation. So that's currently sitting at about $280,000. So every year, the interest that we earn on that sub-fund, we add to the grant of the half of the other donations. So this year, for example, we had 279 donors who contributed $500 each. Half to the sub-fund invested, half to the grant, plus the interest from the sub-fund, and we ended up with a grant of $79,000.
It's good, isn't it?
It's amazing. So, but the best part about it is we advertise the grant round, organisations apply, we involve some of our donors and our committee in shortlisting to 3 organisations, and then we have an event in November where those 3 organisations will pitch for the funding to the donors. The donors then vote and decide which organisation receives the grant. So we're immersing donors then in the education that they get from hearing from those 3 organisations, as well as the decision-making process. So it's a way to immerse people more effectively in the community and give them a chance to make the decision about where the money goes. So last year was a $75,000 grant that went to Wombat's Wish. Yep. You might be aware of Wombat's Wish.
Yep.
So they support kids who have lost a parent.
Yep.
And, the waiting lists for, some of those kids to get in to see a psychologist was huge. So that grant has provided a psychologist into Wombat's Wish to help those kids. So, really incredible grants that we can provide, but also for me, it was also about the education piece. How do we educate more people effectively about the fabulous organisations?
The thing that impresses me about your organisation is that if those who are in a position to invest or donate to it, is they can do so with trust.
Yes.
And knowing that it's professionally run, You've got a well-structured board.
Yes.
You've got a good CEO.
We do.
Right? And the process in which you receive applications for grants and actually make the grants is transparent. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
But let's change track for it again and come back to Gail. Leadership. So you've had a few leadership roles. What are your thoughts on leadership in 2023?
Look, I just think it's not rocket science, to be honest. I just think it's about respect more than anything else. If you don't respect and acknowledge the employees around you, you're not going to succeed. So I think it's about effective listening. It's about understanding, who your employees are and what they do outside of work. It's just about respecting the people that you have who give hours and hours of their time, to do the work for your organisation. So look, I don't subscribe to any particular processes, policies, agendas around leadership.
Or the
It's
latest
about
guru
people.
book on leadership.
No, and it's just about respecting people. We're very lucky to have our office hosted by Adroit Insurance and Risk. They provide our office space, and I've answered this question before about they have a cleaner that comes into the office 5 o'clock every night. I wonder what the cleaner thinks about, some issues in the community. It's just about engaging and respecting people, no matter who they are, no matter what level they are within the organisation. Everybody has an idea that they can contribute, and certainly as a leader, I don't have all of the answers, and I would hope that my team feel that they've got the capacity to contribute into the change and the impact that we have on our community. So not rocket science in my book.
Well, we actually did a podcast with one of your team a while ago, didn't we? Where we spoke about Beyond Blue, for instance.
Oh, with Tony? Okay.
Yeah, with Tony McManus.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, you're right. If you want to know what's going on in the business, go down the shop floor, go out to the back gate, talk to the truck drivers,
Absolutely.
treat them with respect, because, in their private lives, they are actually running sporting clubs, church clubs, school boards. They're doing all of that. And just because they come and work for you doesn't mean to say they've left their brain at home.
No, absolutely not.
So
They're part of community.
Exactly right.
So another interesting thing that you've passed comment about was networking, the power of networking, and Bill and I are both big advocates that people need to get out and meet people. So how have you found that? What sort of things did you do to build the network?
Look, I guess Geelong Business Club, is a great network. So a really good organisation to be a part of. I guess when P500 came along, we went to the Geelong Young Professionals group, which is part of the chamber. So reaching into that network, into a younger cohort of professionals. So it's really about understanding the different networks. I mean, I don't see myself as a young professional. Although I don't know whether they've got an age on that particular.
It's always been a question, actually.
But look, I went along to one of their events the other day that we were supporting just to promote P500 actually, and I was very well welcomed and enjoyed the company. But that's a fabulous network of young professionals, our up and coming leaders in Geelong. So I met some incredible young people that just gives me faith that we're in really good hands in the region. But any of those sorts of networks, I get invited to lots of things, lots of events, lots of opportunities, and I try to get to as many as I can. You need to keep up with who's around and what's happening in the community and what's important to people in the community.
So if people want to make a donation, how do they go about it?
So it's a discussion that we start with. It's just we really like to understand our donors or our potential donors' motivation to start with. What is it about giving to the community that's important to someone? Why would they want to do it? So I like to have those conversations first to understand a donor's motivation. So then it's really about offering our sub-fund potentially, if that's an opportunity, as a $10,000 gift. We also talk about our bequest program. We have had a number of bequests at the foundation which are absolutely critical to our organisation. Our founding donor, Ken Stott, he gave us $2 million to start the organisation, but he left me $5 million in his will.
Wow.
So there's $7 million, but his sub-funds today are worth $13 million. So that just tells the story of the longevity of the fact that Ken's name will live on forever, and that gift that he left, or both of those gifts that he left, are an incredible ongoing contribution to this community. So bequests are really important. Everybody should be thinking about their will, and they should be thinking about family first, but they then should be thinking about, can I leave something for the community? It might just be 1% or 2% of the property that you own or funds that you have. You don't have to be a rich person to potentially have some assets, but we would always say family first. But engage your family about leaving a gift for the community. We've had a number of donors that leave a gift in memory of someone else because they want their name to live on. Yep. So we name every one of our sub-funds and print those names every year. So, and then there's, of course, the P500, which is the $500 gift. We also have a scholarship fund, which we don't perhaps promote as well as we should, because a number of our donors have a particular passion for education and supporting individuals. So we have a number of sub-funds where we advertise scholarships annually, and we'll allocate a scholarship from those investments of anything between $500 and $2,000 to students with a need. So that's why exploring what a person is interested in to start with about community is where we start.
And applying for a grant?
Sure. So 3 grant rounds that we have. So P500 has just opened, closes, I think it's the 13th of September. So that's the $79,000 grant. It's a community wellbeing grant, so pretty broad. So any organisation with deductible gift recipient status can apply. So DGR status is the organisations can give a receipt for a tax donation. Then we have our Adroit. I mentioned Adroit Insurance and Risk. Our fabulous partners, they have been hosting us office space and keep our admin very, very low. They have a golf day every year. So we have a capital grant program that we've linked to the proceeds of that golf day, which is about $75,000 grant. So that's a capital opportunity, and there aren't many capital grant opportunities around. And then our main grant round opens in December, closes mid-Feb for the next financial year. So that's last year we had 83 applications for $3.3 million. So considerable process, takes us 3 months to work through those grant applications with a particular set of criteria that we run across them all. And then we debate and we research and we try to get the money to where it's needed most. So,
and all that's available via the website?
On the website, geelongfoundation.org.
Yep.
So that would probably be the best place to start. But very happy to talk to any community organisation about a grant or anyone that's interested in making a contribution to, the fabulous organisations that we have in our region. Geelong's a very lucky region with respect to grant opportunities. Ourselves, Give Where You Live. There's lots of, really great local private ancillary funds, the Dawn Wade Foundation, the Percy Baxter Trust, Anthony Costa Foundation. We're a very lucky community with lots of organisations that are willing to provide support.
Good, that's great. I particularly like the scholarship idea. My old school has a foundation and with a fair bit of money in it.
Yep.
And the funds are only allowed to be spent on providing education opportunities for those kids who can't afford it.
Yes.
It's not allowed to be spent on buildings or anything else.
Yes.
And I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it is a great idea. Yeah.
So, Gail, thank you.
My pleasure indeed. It's been lovely to chat with you. Thank you for the invitation.
And I said to you it would go quickly. You said at the end, what am I going to talk about? We've gone for about 29 minutes, so there you go.
All right.
Well, thanks. Thank you.
On average, aren't we? Yeah. Thank you, Gail. It's been it's a great story, and we hope that this podcast goes far and wide and people take notice of what they can do.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mark.